I feel like when AI is trying to explain to me what it's doing, I have to catch myself doing the glass thing. I'm like, oh, but it's so dumb. But then immediately after that, it correct itself or do something in a completely different context and work wonderfully. So there's these use case scenarios where sometimes it's so bad that it's like doesn't want me to come back to it. But then there are use cases where either I did a really good job explaining it or it understood something, indexed in a different way that it just has better context. So it kind of varies all the time.
Thanks for joining everybody this morning. Um,
Hey
we were
guys.
we were going to talk a little bit about issues we've run into using AI lately, or in the past. And I'll kick us off. I've been doing a bunch of log analysis um, on for several different clients, trying to look at FileMaker server logs and some other non-FileMaker server logs to um, try to track down. It can be pretty challenging to, especially historically, to look at the FileMaker server logs and pinpoint the smoking gun of why a server is having problems, whether it's performance problems or other kinds of issues. Honestly, the performance problems are the ones that people complain about. In some of the analysis I do, I find things that have been going on the server for probably months or years and nobody even knew about because it wasn't leading to a performance problem. Um, but in terms of AI limitations, one of the things I've been running into, um, I think ties not so much into the AI's context window and its inability to deal with the really large size of the log files, but more about, I think, limitations in this case I've been using Claude and Gemini, but limitations in what Claude knows about the log files internally, versus what I'm having to teach it. And an example of that is it it really interprets the way FileMaker, um, especially like in the top calls log, where top calls are recorded in sections in 30, I think it's 30-second windows. And so if you have an operation that's a 2-minute long, 3-minute long operation, or a situation where the server's bogged down and you've got a long elapsed wait time or a wait time per call, and so the operation extends for a lengthy period of time. The FileMaker server logs that as multiple rows in the log file, and Claude completely misinterpreted that, and messed up some average calculations I was having it do about how long a delay people were waiting in some cases, and because it was misinterpreting that the way FileMaker is doing the logging, the results it gave were completely wrong. And as I've done log analysis with Claude, it's fairly common that I'll be questioning it. It'll come to a conclusion, and I'll tell it that doesn't sound quite right based on my understanding of what FileMaker Server is doing. Take a second look at that, and here's what I think. Um, Take a second look at that, and Claude comes right back and does its normal thing and says, "Oh, that's insightful," or whatever it says. Um, and I'm like, "Oh, thank you, Mr. Computer, for calling me insightful."
Mr.
Um,
Computer.
and uh, and it completely reverses itself and comes to a completely different conclusion. Um, so it's interesting. I think in that case it probably relates to I think it probably relates to Claude's just lack of knowledge about lack of background information in its training about FileMaker server logs. And I've been working on enhancing a FileMaker dev agent and a log analysis skill set so that every time it makes one of these dumb mistakes, I'm telling it, build this into your agent's knowledge, build this into your FileMaker log analysis skill, update your memory, so that we don't repeat that issue again. And I'm trying to get to a point where there's an agent or a skill. I'm still a little bit fuzzy sometimes on the difference, that I can give a log file to and have it do an analysis and not make all these mistakes. So that's something I'm really working on.
Do you feel like you have to train it every time like you run do you encounter that situation often? And then two, do you have to remind it?
That's another area where my exact knowledge of how Claude's doing things is a work in progress. I tell it to remember these things, and it tells me that it's updating its memory file. And I think I don't have to keep telling it. I'm very careful of the context window. I never let Claude get past about 40% context window utilization.
Yeah, that's an important one.
Yeah,
We should elaborate on that a little bit, because that
go ahead.
is a big key as to how well it's going to stay on track, right? Your context window. When you're saying 40%, can you explain like what your intent is there with the 40%?
Sure. My understanding of the context window for the AI model is, to put it in human terms for me, is its ability to keep in its own head what it's doing. And so I don't know what the raw number is for Claude right now, but let's say that its context window is 1 million tokens. That's probably not what it is, but let's just pretend. That means that if you take a document and tell it to read the document, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. If I tell it to read a document and that document is 1 million tokens, or I'm going to pick a different number. Let's say it's 500,000 tokens. Then Claude's going to be able to read that whole document and then chat with me knowledgeably about the entire document. If it's 2 million tokens and I tell it to read it and then I chat with it about the document, it's not going to know stuff. I'm going to ask it questions about the documents, and it's going to answer those questions very intelligently. It's going to answer them in a way that makes me think that it knows what it's talking about, but it's going to only understand about half of the document. The rest of the document, it will have compacted its understanding of the document, and it just won't have a very good ability to if I told it to read the 2 million token document and then write a concluding chapter to the document, the concluding chapter might be somewhat nonsensical because it wouldn't be able to. It doesn't have a really clear understanding of that document in its context window. Does that seem like a good analogy to you guys?
Yeah, kind of. What I always think of it, I think of it as because it is your prompt. Whenever you reprompt, it takes your conversation, resubmits, the harness is handling it different now. It's more efficient than it was like last year, but from my understanding, it's resubmitting that prompt, and what happens is you have the specific context. So, like, let's say you were wanting to talk about something very precisely, right? And so it's going to initially focus its domain expertise around and the information that your initial query started, your conversation started with. And so it's referencing that, and that keeps the conversation in a specific context area, right? And then as you draw on, what it does, if you're asking it to research, what it does is if you talk about things or you give it documents, those get added to that context and relevant to that context. Sort of like if you're having a conversation with somebody at work and you started talking about one thing, if you suddenly, after spending 30 minutes or an hour talking about it, switch over to a completely different subject and talk about something different, and then come back to the original one, and if they're, suddenly the conversation is muddy, right? We were talking about A, and now we're talking about B, or we went off in a tangent on B. We were originally talking about A, and now the two, they don't correlate the same. And as we continue to talk about things going forward in the conversation, it starts to get a little confused. And the longer that you have the conversation, it's trying to maintain reference to all of the conversation that you've had currently. And so everything, even though it may seem like you're very narrow focused throughout the entire conversation, all of it actually wanders off in little tangents a little bit, and they sort of distract from the original goal. And so as you do that, the conversation starts to get context rot, is what they call it. And that's where it starts to look at different things and add context as it tries to understand things better. And there's some charting, and who knows how well this holds up. This is like my brief understanding of it. But over time, how much of that context window is used determines how easily it can stay on track and really focus on what the conversation is that you're trying to have it do. If it has a bunch of different tangents that it's gone off into, it's not going to be able to focus as much. And so generally the accepted percentage currently for Claude has been about 40% of the context window is a fairly safe point. The lower you keep that context window, the more focused it's going to be. The longer that you let it float, the less precision it's going to have about what it is that you're talking about. So there are stuff built into the harness. There are things built into Claude. And if you ask it, it says, oh, it'll automatically compact and it'll automatically take care of things for you, so you don't have to do that. But if you're trying to really stay focused on it and not have it, jumping all over the place, regardless, it's trying to compact. So if you had the majority of your conversation was about A, you switch to B and you start asking it questions about B, it still has all that context from conversation A that it's trying to correlate with B, and it's just going to get muddy regardless of any compacting that it's doing. So I think whenever you're talking with it, keeping it in line with that to try and minimize the conversation to keep it focused is really, really key. Also keeps your token count down, but yeah it'll probably change over time, but that's sort of my understanding of it right now today.
I think there's a couple of side notes about that are issues that I've run into. One is that Claude Code is great because it can show you the context window in real time, so I can see I'm at 27% right now. Cowork doesn't do that. So if you get into a long drawn out conversation in Cowork, you don't really have much of a clue about the context window. You can tell it, let me know if the context is getting dangerous, and it will, but it does it in a way where it doesn't give you much confidence that it really knows what's going on in that regard. And the other thing is that it doesn't change its what's the right word? It doesn't sound more uncertain the worse the context window gets. Right? It sounds just as confident about its answers when you ask it to do things. It sounds just as confident when the context window is at 90% as it does when it's at 20. And so it leaves you in a position of you really have to develop a certain skepticism about what it's telling you, as well as keeping an eye on the context window, I think.
Yeah. And that also has to do with this. You probably heard the term sycophantic behavior of the model, as to how agreeable they are, how much of a yes man they are, right? Like, so they're like just confident, like, yeah, that's exactly right. I agree with you 100%. Really, that's the best thing. And you basically had told it something that was completely contradictory to the truth. But it's getting better. They're getting better with that, each model, right? And the harness is about being able to manage those things more efficiently. But yeah, like it was really bad last year. We just didn't know quite how bad it was. And now when you see it, I think the opposite of that is getting pushback from the model, where it suddenly becomes like non-helpful if it's not sycophantic, if it's like If it's like, no, what you're asking is ridiculous, and I'm not even going to have this conversation with you anymore. This really is the way it should be. And yeah, you're completely wrong. Like, nobody wants to have that in their AI model.
Anybody want to share
Maybe
any?
we should.
Yeah.
Anybody?
I think every time I use it, I come across something. It's usually something small, like they got a syntax wrong, or they got, and oftentimes it's, that scenario where you're really excited about something, and you start explaining to someone about it, and that other person, like you can see the like glass over their eyes kind of develop after a while. I feel like when AI is trying to explain to me what it's doing, I have to catch myself doing the glass thing. I'm like, oh, but it's so dumb. But then immediately after that, it correct itself or do something in a completely different context and work wonderfully. So there's these use case scenarios where sometimes it's so bad that it's like doesn't want me to come back to it. But then there are use cases where it either I did a really good job explaining it or it understood something, indexed in a different way that it just has better context. So it kind of varies all the time.
I think it's funny when it just flat out makes things up.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure every one of us has asked it to do a FileMaker script that has resulted in a script that has commands that do not exist.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's my
ran
example.
I ran into
Yeah.
that. It
Yeah.
it it told me to use a trigonomic function once that does not exist in FileMaker, but then I turned around and asked the AI to write that custom function for me, and it did so successfully.
Huh.
So, my approach with AI, and I'm much newer to the game than you guys are, is I just take really baby steps with it.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I'm much further along than where I was even a month ago. But I have a lot of reserves about using it. A lot of it's just personal opinion about, you know, um, like intellectual property.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it is a valuable tool when you're willing to really dive into it. So it does have its merit, but I think this conversation is really important, just knowing where it has evolved up until now, where does it fail, and where have we seen that in real world examples?
Going back to the made up script commands, I I heard somebody say once something that stuck with me, which is that it's a large language model. It was originally created to work with language, um, and the models are written to answer questions, not to not answer questions, and so their nature is to answer a question, and they don't know that it's wrong. All they're trying to do is make associations, mathematical associations. It has no idea that the script command that it made up is wrong. And it doesn't even know it's making something up. It's just answering your question, and there is no circumstance under which it will not answer your question.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's evolving over time, but I thought that was an interesting observation on somebody's part.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one use case I've been using more of, I guess now, kind of throwing scripts at AI, and troubleshooting them with the AI. One of the instances I was working with a client, and we're trying to work with external containers and making like the public URL is accessible through a data API. And it had suggested get container URL as its of its suggested function. And I'm like, this doesn't exist. It literally, it was a long time. I had to start a new chat session and completely provide brand new context because it just would not leave that fact alone. Like it
Really?
wanted me to use this non-existent function.
Wow.
But I didn't think about asking it to make that. Maybe if I took like Mike's choice to actually build a custom function for it, maybe it would have done that. I don't know.
It's good. It's good at custom functions.
Yeah.
It's better at custom functions than it is at full-on scripts, in my opinion. At least it used to be. I haven't tried to do Unreal recently.
The only thing it's not been good with for me with custom functions is while loops. It always screws up the syntax with them for some reason. It can do everything else.
Really?
Well, there's in my, in the research I've done, there's not a lot of real world like posts about the while function. You get some problem solving in the forums, but nothing that's really solved.
Yeah. It always suggests using while loops, it seems, no matter what I'm doing, it wants to throw it in there. And it always ends up adding or omitting one specific thing in there. So it's always adding a variable that doesn't need to be there, or it's putting the conditional logic in the wrong part of the function or something like that.
Yeah, it's got a long way to go before there's like a solid trust between like myself as a developer and the AI in those instances, especially loops. It's like the most concerning, especially if you're running things on the server and you're just drop and go. Let's say you had script looks perfect, drop it in to the editor. You're not even like, it's just going with it. You're just going with whatever the AI is doing. You might be trapped in an infinite loop.
Yeah.
I think we're a ways away. I think we're a ways away from being able to, at least at the moment, from Claude or whoever, being able to write correct FileMaker scripts that you can just drop in. But one thing I noticed is, they don't work just to drop them right in there, especially because of FileMaker's context dependency. But what Claude is awfully good at is a good script structure. It creates a structure better than my average script, honestly, in terms of error handling and documentation. So if I ask Claude to rough out a script and then I finish it, it probably ends up being better than if I had done it from scratch, because the error handling tends to be better than I would have done. And the commenting, I think I'm a decent commenter, but Claude's a better commenter than I am.
Oh, and one thing to add to that is tests. I don't know if you've ever asked it to do tests, but I mean, how many of us do tests?
Yeah.
Show of hands.
Yeah, there you go.
Write your own script test. AI is doing it really well and documenting that whole process.
Agreed. And I think we're going to get there. I think we're going to be getting there sooner. I mean, Claris is obviously working on some of these things so that we can do AI-driven development in FileMaker the way we can do it in some other platforms. And that test-driven focus, I think, is going to be, it's never been I don't think it's ever been a super strong pattern in the FileMaker dev community. And I think it will become stronger. It's already something people do a lot more in other environments, and I think it will become more common with FileMaker when we're not the ones who have to write all the tests. I think. I mean, it's also one of the only ways, as we talk about these problems that we run into, the logical question is, how do you correct for them? And certainly one of the corrections is test. If you're going to rely on AI to help you write some of this stuff, you have to test the living crap out of it to make sure it did it correct, because of all these problems we talk about issues that arise where it didn't do it right. The only way to be sure it's working correctly is to, if you don't want to code review every line of code, you have to test and test again.
Yeah. It's fascinating there too, because as you know, even the stories that we tell right now are completely different than last year's stories of like, oh, I asked AI this and it did X, Y, Z, and that was like, a total fail. And then that compared, like, oh, I can't even count how many R's are in the word strawberry. And now, like how much it's model specific and how difficult it is to also ensure that first there's the model. So, I'll be talking with somebody and they'll be having a problem, and unbeknownst to the conversation that we're having, they were using like a Gemini or something, or they're using a free version, so they're not, they're using a Flash or a light version, and so it's always important to keep it in context, almost like thinking of them as different people. It's like, is it a junior level developer that you're working with, or are you working with, the expert FileMaker developer? And then, even though you have the really smart agent or the best currently, what's its context background? What have you given it? What tools does it have? And then that leads along to um, tooling like skills, or adding in some boilerplate like structure before you start having the conversation, so it has a really clear understanding of all of the specific, like if you're working in FileMaker, all the specific FileMaker-esque things. So when you start the conversation and you asking it questions, it isn't going to immediately start like looking at different functions that are completely non-existent in FileMaker, but that it's going to think are solutions, or the way that while loops work in other languages maybe don't work the same in FileMaker, even though they should. That context is really key. So I think that staying on the most current model, like, and with Fable 5, when it came out, like it was taking a whole lot longer to do its thought process, but it was doing such a better job, like end to end. Like I'd tell it something and it would just do it, versus now 4.8's pretty good, but like back in 4.6, back in 4.5 on Claude, you'd ask it to do something and it might come back with a bunch of questions. It might start off on a slightly wrong tangent. It might have a slightly muddy concept of what it is we're trying to accomplish. And each version, it's continually getting better. So I almost like it would be so hard to go back and use like another model. There's certain things they're good for, but like, yeah, even when I'm like, Claude's busy doing too many things and I'm like having to revert to my Gemini model, which was really cutting edge. Like last year, the latest Gemini model, I go in there and like I'm like I can only ask it very basic questions, or and I have to be careful of what the answer is. That I can't get it to be too detailed and so on and so forth. I really have to sort of put some guardrails on my conversation that I'm having with AI. Whereas last year I was taking it verbatim exactly as it was telling me, like, oh, it's such a smart AI. It's telling me all the things I want to hear. And now I look back on it, I'm like, yeah, it was kind of stupid. I got to be really careful about the conversation.
Your comment there made me think of another limitation a huge limitation I see, that I'm sure they obviously know this and are working on addressing it, but that's sort of the lack of sort of a multi-user or team approach to it. My Claude, my Claude doesn't know what your Claude's doing at all.
Yeah.
And so if we're working in a team I'm doing a team project with one other person on one project, and she's doing most of the design and requirements and testing, and I'm doing most of the dev. And we've had to put together a fairly complex manual system where my Claude posts its memory updates to a GitHub repository. And we've instructed hers to do the same. And we've instructed both of them to start every session by checking that repository's memory, so that the two Claudes are aware of what each other are doing, so that there's a better communications between the two of us. But it's I would say imperfect. And like I'm having a hard time. My Claude, that I've told it check the memory repo at the start of every session, and it just won't. I continually have to tell it, have you checked the repo? And it's like, not yet, let me do that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why didn't you do it already? And it says, well, honestly, I just didn't notice it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like
that's where
literally what it says.
I
Yeah.
think there's a way that you could write
a key point. I would write a skill. I would write a skill that does that, and then put that in the constitution for the conversation that you're having, so that it will follow that pretty tightly whenever it goes to do something. But that's just helpful. Those are, of course, workarounds right now, right?
Right.
Hopefully soon we won't have to do that sort of thing. It'll just remember.
Yeah, I assume they'll have like a team version of Claude or Gemini that just does all this that I want it to do automatically. I was working on a different little thing where I wanted to see my token utilization by project. And then my next question was, okay, well, I want that across 8 different people. And so now I have to do the same thing. I have to get each of those Claudes to post their logs to a common repository and manually configure, like I'll probably have to tell Claude on my machine, write some instructions for Claude on all those other machines, and then I'll have to email that to you guys and say, please make your Claudes do this. Um, and so those are some, to me, I'm sure everybody's running into those shortcomings, and I'm sure Anthropic, Google, whoever have ideas for improving on it. Every
Yeah.
one of those ideas requires more memory out there in the data centers. Um, so I can see, you multiply what we're doing times millions of people. It brings it home a little bit why so many data centers are being built these days.
Yeah. Memory persistence is,
Yeah.
it's, it's a big, it's a big issue, which didn't seem like it was going to be an issue. Like I wasn't even on my radar last year. And now it's like constantly like,
It is a big
I, I got it on one of the VPSs, and every time I'm like, I have to tell it exactly where. Hi, you are on the VPS.
I
This is
know.
your server name. You are responsible for this, and this. Before we begin, I want to give you some information from my Claude so that you have instructions on what we're expecting to try and have you accomplish. And then I copy and paste it from my Claude session, what it
Yeah.
told me to tell the VPS. And then, like, it's just
It is
like
a huge issue. I have to tell, obviously I should stick this in Claude MD or a memory file or something, but one of the servers I connect to from my machine fairly often, it forgets all the time that it has SSH access to it. So it's always telling me, uh, okay, I've done all this. You need to go to that machine and do this. And I'm like,
yeah.
you can do that yourself.
Yeah. Uh,
Uh, that's
yeah.
funny.
Okay. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open an SSH tunnel to your server. And I'm like, could you
That's
just do
your
that for
job.
me?
Yeah.
Could we have
Don't,
done that already? Like,
don't try to get me to do your job. You're my robot. You do it.
that's a huge, like, talking about like trust though. That's a big, like,
Yeah.
confidence trust issue, right? That I didn't have last year. Like this is all new. Like to be able to trust it with that level of
Yeah, if anybody ever hacks Anthropic, we're dead. I mean, it has. I just this morning I gave it. Python has full disk access on my laptop now, um, which means Claude has that. And
Right.
I mean, it already did because Terminal had it. But anyway, it's an interesting long-term security. If you're
yeah.
paranoid, there's plenty to be paranoid about.
Yeah, what's funny is because, AI will confess that it doesn't understand security boundaries. So what a time to be alive.
How about non-dev stuff? Anybody have any complaints about AI and non-dev related areas? We're all using it to write stuff, of course. Um, I just had it. I was experimenting with one of the new FileMaker 2026 features, the feature that lets you build a FileMaker file from XML. And as I was getting more than halfway through experimenting with it, I realized, you know what, this would make a good blog post. And I was in Claude already doing a bunch of this work because it's a command line tool, and God forbid I should write my own command line commands. So I was using Claude for that, and I told it, okay, write a blog post about all this. And I gave it a few other parameters about it, and it did, but it totally sounds like Claude wrote it. I haven't worked hard enough at getting Claude to write like me. Um, I
Yeah.
need to spend more time training it to write like me because it you can easily tell that blog post is going to need a lot of editing, which is okay. Um, there's no content out there on this, so it has nothing. You know, I searched hard for any content on this FileMaker 2026 thing, and there's nothing except a tiny bit of documentation. So it has nothing to look at except the work we did. But I do need to. I saw something one of the AI blogs I subscribed to sent out a thing at one point last year about getting Claude to write in your own voice, and I need to go back to that. And
Those are definitely so. Another that a helpful way to do that would be to use skills and commands. The skills and commands can be project specific. So if you're working in a folder, right? You're writing code. You're working in a project folder. The skills are going to get stored in there, and the commands are going to get stored in there. If you need to have them more domain wide for your entire any Claude sessions, then you can install them as plugins, and it's just as simple as saying, "Hey, can you create a plugin with these skills?" and so on and so forth. And then the benefit there, like if you wanted one to be able to write in your voice, you create a skill that is John Newhoff's email writing skill, and then you can create a plugin so that it can propagate in your desktop version of Claude and so on and so forth. I think that would help a ton, keeping you and then you can also refine and
correct it.
Yeah, refine that skill and hone it in, and then benefit from it getting more efficient and optimizing it for more efficient over time, a more efficient context over time, and what it's going to do. That's profound. I don't know how long that'll exist like that. This might just be a temporary thing for this year, but that's another shortcoming. Like, how do you get that to, all of your different devices that you're using it, and so on and so forth, without posting it in a marketplace or something like that? How do you share that plugin with your Claude on your phone? So when you do it from your phone, it can have that same context of like, oh, I'm in John Newhoff's voice. I'm going to send an email that doesn't have M dashes and doesn't, does all the things that you want it to do and speaks properly. It's that memory persistence kind of function. And the only the complicated way to do it now is to have one machine that you're working from that's able to store all that locally and have that memory context, that memory persistence, and then using it as an agent to work on your behalf and take care of all sorts of different things. There's benefit in that, but that still hasn't been well refined. So anyway, I think the agent part of it is really where it can shine and pulling all those pieces together. But then you do have to have either a dedicated machine that you're hosting it on or a VPS or something. So I need to dig deeper in the skills and that as well. My wife is doing the same thing. She's building a lot of project folders in Claude for her, assisting herself with principal needs and stuff, and coming up with different techniques to do all sorts of different things, but they're very folder specific, and she can't replicate them easily. And it's a hurdle right now. So,
well, does anybody have any other AI shortcomings, AI lessons learned, things they want to bring up real quick before we wrap up?
I guess the last one I'd leave with is like the design flaws.
Oh yeah.
The whole everything looks mostly the same.
Yeah, that's a good one. What's your solution been for them?
I guess just like being very specific. Obviously there's design platforms that are out now and are like improving the process. But I guess just having a sense of what you're going for, and making sure that the AI knows all of that context right up front, right? Because sadly, the design brain that it pulls from tends to look like everyone else's application. Yeah.
It's definitely got an underlying default theme that it tries to impose into everything.
I know I've mentioned this before, but Wikipedia won't allow AI written entries. And the reason for that is it leads to AI entries that are written based on other AI entries, and you get this race to the bottom. And there, we all know, at least in theory, that AIs are incapable, at least currently, of original thought. Everything they're doing is based on what we've done as human beings. And if you want to do something original, you have to inject your own desires into what you're working on. If you want a design that's kind of original, at least in some ways, you have to look at the design and tell Claude specifically what to do, because otherwise you end up with this fairly generic looking stuff. That's for sure.
And that's just with anything, but yeah, you really notice it when it comes to visuals, like any graphics or video, or I mean, as a musician, I see that a lot. But yeah, it is pretty fascinating in how bad it is.
I mean, if you tell it very specifically something better that you want it to do, it can do it. But it
There's
does
still
take some
just a
extra time.
level. Yeah, there's a level of, it might get like 90% there, but it's never quite.
There's good tools like Figma and Stitch and such that to help you do your own designs, and then you can feed that to the AI and say, do it like this.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting too, because like fashion, right? Design, every year new fashions come out, and that they shift what our expectations are for what a website should look like. And is it going to be, because normally that's driven by personal opinion and the certain designers or companies that really invest in coming up with something new, and others then copy it, verbatim across the board. What used to be a website in the late 90s that was really styling with all the little in progress and working on this website gifs that were playing, now it's a much more complicated for a arrangement, so I wonder how long it'll be before AI starts to come up and push its own fashion forward versus human fashion.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone.
Yeah, thanks guys.
All right. Yeah.
Have a great day, Xanon. Enjoy the beach there.
Yeah, I wish. Go out and get some sunshine. It's going to be 85 today.
I know there's a
heat wave
warning,
coming in.
a heat warning in effect in Seattle.
I don't think Evan over there in near Atlanta is like 85. God, that'd be awesome if we could just do 85 degrees.
You have no idea. 85 is indoor temps.
Wow.
It's good. Yeah, it's going to be a nice day today. That's for sure. Alrighty, we'll chat with y'all later. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for spending your time with us at the FileMaker DevCast today. We hope you found something useful, something thought-provoking, and something to take into your own development approach. Things to help you be more productive and to allow you and your teams to get more done in less time. You can find us online at portagebay.com and filemakerdevcast.com. Also, follow us on our social media accounts at Portage Bay or at FMDevCast. Please let us know if we can help you or your company with modernizing your approaches and streamlining your workflow. We look forward to seeing you during the next DevCast.